But at this point, I want to invite up Rob and Catherine from Tipalti and hear a little bit of their story as a power couple and some of the work they've been doing around orchestration. Okay, so now you haven't been together at 6 companies like Meg and Ryan, but you have been together at 2.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, what you did, particularly from an account-based strategy at NetSuite, is very, very different from what's driving growth at Tipalti today. Maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, completely. Obviously, at NetSuite, it worked successfully. We grew the company 40 million to $500 million, and that was a great run. But it was a very different problem. You had a world of 400,000 targets. Everyone has to have accounting systems or ERP systems, and therefore there's a lot of native inbound pain that you can catch, and therefore the marketing mix was different. Toward the last, I was there 8 years, before public, and then of course to the point where I left when it was like $500 million. The last year and a half, so that we could get incremental growth every year, target account marketing and target account strategy started taking off at the company. But it was very slow, and the way the company was going about doing it, myself included as part of the crime, wasn't being done the right way, in my opinion. And so when I joined Tipalti about 2.5 years ago, that was also a similar situation to Megan's, where marketing didn't exist. We had to create, completely overhaul the website, put in marketing systems, data management, reporting, the strategy, the messaging, and the such. And in this case, it wasn't the case of, particularly at that time. Nowadays, it's actually slightly different, so it's like going back to the future. But at that point, the targets we had were basically broke down to 3 niches, so to speak. Ad tech, so if you think of ad networks, affiliate networks, monetization networks, and the such, share economy, or what people are calling online marketplaces these days, and online services. If you think of all 3 of those sectors, you can't find them in any SIC code list dropdown. If you go to Netline or Madison Logic, they're not in their industry dropdowns. You can't even find them on LinkedIn with a industry. And so one of the ways to crack those markets is actually target account marketing. If you build a list of the 2,000 or 3,000 companies who are in those spaces, then you can turn on all these machines, the data, the mechanisms to get in front of those folks. So target account marketing became a huge part of our strategy, as well as what Craig talked about with personalization. To engage with those people, not only find them, you have to personalize the message, because actually in our space, we're supplier payments automation, and so each of those folks in these spaces have different terminology on their suppliers, right? Some companies call them vendors, some companies call them publishers, some companies call them developers, some companies call them the freelancers and the crowdsourcers and the contractors of the world, and you literally have to have different brand names, different terminology, different messages, and so personalization becomes a big key. You can't do personalization right to a degree if you don't have target account processes in place, as well as other key processes that go beyond target account marketing. But so it really was a complete reversal in terms of strategy. Nowadays, the company is going to much broader markets, and so it's kind of what Craig talked about, where we're managing multiple different funnels. And so we've got the inbound funnel and the content marketing funnel and the target account funnel, and balancing those from a system and process perspective and measurement is very challenging.
Yeah, and from an ops perspective, I have a broader role here at Tipalti than I did at NetSuite, but I remembered it pretty much being a cakewalk of a job, because it was like a rinse and repeat type cycle for campaigns. It was like you had your select verticals. Everybody who was in a certain vertical, they'd get the same nurturing email, they'd get the same preset emails that were decided like 2 months in advance on a schedule. So it was pretty easy once you had that template set up. Here at Tipalti, it's not as easy. It's a little bit more creative, more fun from an ops perspective, because you have to set up unique workflows. You need to be talking to sales and sales ops all the time to see who should be getting what, who should be getting these notifications, who these people should be routing to. You have to talk to your content team and your email team saying, if this person from this account does this thing, should we pull them from this nurture and put them in this different track? So it's a lot more work in a way, but it's also a lot more interesting. I think it's a lot more fulfilling as an ops person, just to have your finger in all of these different pots and to be setting up all of these different personalized campaign tracks for different segments.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight, and I think some people abuse technology and they think about it strictly from the standpoint of it allows us to do more. but I really think it's around, it allows us to do better. And when we talk about orchestration, we talk about the importance of a unified view of your data and being able to glean insights from it. The real art, from an operations standpoint, is to really look at that data and say, well, what narrative is that telling us? What insights are we gleaning from it? How do we interpret that? And then how do we turn that into action? And you know, the opportunities and the permutations on those opportunities is unlimited. It does give you a lot of creativity on how to activate that data to really have an impact, a lot of times on top-line revenue growth. Now, one of the things that was different that you talked about is kind of the relationship with the sales organization between NetSuite versus Tipalti, and also even the account development. You know, how you develop that list is centralized at Tipalti, a very different model. So tell us about what process is different here, and then how did you get sales to buy into that?
Yeah. So the relationship at NetSuite with sales ops and marketing ops was also very, very close. So it was a very close relationship. But when it came to target account reporting and target account list per se, definitely a completely different process. One of the issues that we had with our target account approach at NetSuite was the list. NetSuite had something like 30 different sales teams in different regions of the country, different industries, and they were all very disparate. There wasn't a coordinated, cohesive piece. Chaos worked in that case, but long term it may make things challenging for them. I really wanted to centralize that process, and that started with target account to a large degree. So target account, we didn't have a target account approach. We didn't have marketing at all, but we didn't have a target account approach from a sales perspective when I joined Tipalti. And so I really wanted to centralize it from those learnings at NetSuite. And so marketing built the target account list. We got buy-in from sales, and we certainly got their initial inputs. We took their opportunities in the system, the companies they were targeting, their feedback on these are the best niches to go after and the such, but marketing built it from scratch. Some of it was just manually, you know, it was a spreadsheet initially, Google spreadsheet, shipping stuff out to Upwork to do some research on our behalf, using some predictive analytics. We used a variety of different tactics, including getting input from sales. We built that target account list, then we built the data behind the target account list, we prioritized that list, then we did basically exactly what Craig said. Once we got their initial buy-in, we went back to them and said, okay, here's that list, here's the data, we've taken a stab at prioritizing it, can you now identify how to prioritize it for us? There wasn't all that much change that came back, but we got their footprint on there. And that started the process of them buying in. Because initially, they were doing some smart techniques on the sales side prior to us joining that were target account-like in a sales-type manner. This was just formalizing it, but initially there was definitely skepticism on how can marketing help us do this better? And so we had to prove it to them. You know, it's kind of, you can say what you do, and then you have to actually do it and show metrics that prove that it works. If you can't do all three of those things, you can have the best strategy, and it's pointless. And so that's what we had to do. We had to build that list, prioritize it, get their feedback, and then build the muscle, the systems, the reporting, the processes to prove that it works and put it in place. So that's kind of how we went about that. I think, Kat, you can probably give perspective on what it looks like today, because that was 2.5 years ago when we built that list now.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same process in a way. I mean, we go back into our database, and we have to refresh it like every half or every year just to make sure that we are still attracting the same companies, or if we've changed and our customer base has changed. But we look into our history and see what was done right, like who positively moved down the funnel, who turned into customers, who turned into good referenceable customers. And we look for signals on how all of those companies are pretty much, I'm struggling with words right now, how they're similar. And after we pretty much build that list out, and sometimes we add our own tidbits, like we know that there are certain technologies that we cater more to, and there are certain, let's say, company sizes and revenue ranges. But after we build that initial list out, then we go to sales, they give their feedback, which a lot of times is helpful when it comes to, this industry, it's not as great, or when it comes to personas. These are the 3 roles that we usually see on every opportunity. So let's add a little bit more emphasis to that. But it usually is a back and forth of us giving them something, them giving us feedback, and us tweaking until we kind of find that sweet spot, and that's what we go for our target account list, until it's ready to refresh again, and we start over.
Now, what I like about that approach is you can see that they go back consistently, and they're looking at the data that they're capturing from their different systems, and they're applying hypotheses to it. Here's the pattern I see. This is what we think it means. And then they collaborate. They talk to their sales counterparts on what it likely means and what the corresponding action can be. I mean, that's orchestration right at its definition. But it's also completely dependent on agreeing on the metrics. And I know you have a strong point of view on metrics.
Yeah, so when we talked about when I started, one of the initial things we did, we put in place Marketo, but we worked with one of their partners, Digital Pi, to really get that system implemented. I didn't have to do it in a month. Fortunately, I had like 2.5, 3 months, basically, but we had this Jan 1 deadline. I started like September 16th, and the whole marketing plan, that same thing, the 90 days, had to be implemented Jan 1 with the whole machine working, including overhauling our website. And I remember working with, one of my first 2 hires were marketing ops and content marketing, not product marketing, content marketing. And so those were the first 2 hires. And I remember working over Christmas while I was on holiday with my content marketer on the website and the systems and implementing, getting everything to this Jan 1. But a key mandate when we brought on Digital Pi is the reporting. Because everything, I didn't want to have qualitative conversations, opinions, and that's great. But I want to cut through that. Our CEO is a developer, probably similar to your CEO, and they want numbers, they want processes and the such, and that's how marketing should be run anyway. And so we put in place a system where we look at 3 different measurement pieces. There's new leads, and then how that goes down the funnel, and everything has to be tied. I don't care about MAL and QL and the such. You know, I know Sirius helped establish that, but I think we've kind of moved beyond that. It just should be going down straight to opportunity, and then sale, and then revenue. And so every single part of our metric system, from every new lead source, is tied down to opportunity. I have in real-time dashboards within Salesforce. I just press refresh. I know every single opportunity that was created from a new lead by the source, by the employee size, by the industry, by every segment. Same with revenue, and same with deal size. Similarly, on the nurtured lead side, so we have a definition of nurtured leads. A nurtured lead is essentially a marketing lead that was created, or by sales, it doesn't matter to me, sales or marketing that's in the system, that then marketing was able to re-engage with in a meaningful way, as dictated by marketing from a program success perspective. And then when they re-respond again, then we can see, okay, this is how many nurtured leads we have, because it's not great to just have new leads. It's a conversation. We're in B2B. It's a 3 to 6 month sales cycle, and you have to be moving people down the funnel. And then finally, as a sub of both those, there's target counts. And so target count is that list of 3,000 in digital economy, 2,000 in the e-commerce space and such. And how many of those folks do we get to engage either way, from a new lead, nurtured lead, and then at the higher level, web visits and opens and clicks and all that good stuff. And so you have to have all 3 measurement systems in parallel and then tied down to opportunity and sale and revenue. Otherwise, talking to a sales exec or my CEO or the such, or CFO for that matter, and you're just like, oh, I got this much activity. That's cute. If it doesn't generate revenue, it doesn't matter, at least opportunities.
Yeah, I think one of the saddest things as an analyst, for 5 years that I would talk to companies, and this will be kind of a career tip to anybody in marketing operations that's out there. I talked to way too many companies where literally we would speak with marketing operations and they would want us to review their reporting, their monthly reporting, their quarterly reporting to prepare for a QBR. And they were not questioning the data. They were not analyzing it or interpreting it. What they were trying to do was get it to fit to a pre-existing narrative. And I think that's a huge mistake. And hopefully you see that in the panelists that we have up here today. Complete commitment to honest and transparent reporting against those metrics, being held accountable to real business outcomes. If you don't have a marketing leader that thinks that way, you should probably look for one. All right, so one more question before we open it up to the audience for questions. But Tipalti is a Silicon Valley unicorn. You have grown quite substantially from the early days when it was just yourself and your first 2 hires. So what are some of the initiatives you have going on now through the end of 2017?
So definitely a few things Craig mentioned from a target account perspective. One of our next steps of maturity is creating an account score. We use some predictive analytics to have an account score, but it's not really good enough. We have to make our own proprietary account score, aggregating the contacts and such. That's why I asked that question, because I'm trying to steal some knowledge from you. But we're creating an account score. We have to tier that in a more programmatic way to align marketing and sales, but then put different marketing programs and sales programs in place to attack those folks properly. So that's one key piece on the target account side. Definitely a trigger-based event. So I think a layer, both for nurtured as well as target accounts, is looking for triggered activities. And it's not really predictive. It's not really target account exclusive, but giving those clues to sales and marketing to kind of go deeper. And related to that is kind of intent and needs-based marketing. So we've been collecting and building our own database of needs. And so we use Marketo and kind of watch web behavior and what pages people are engaging with, which campaigns. We have our own custom field within Marketo of need, and based on that, personalization beyond that. So there's personalization based on industry, based on company size, but need to me is one that's particularly exciting. Need or intent, if you call it, but if you watch paid keywords, that gives you a sense of need or intent. If you watch campaign activity, that gives you that. Certainly web behavior is that, and there's other data sources you can use to get these types of hints. But then personalizing everything, the web experience, the email experience, the sales conversation experience, and the such, and then coordinate across that so it's consistent across every single conversation. That's where we're headed to. We're not there yet, but we're working toward it.
That's not a bold vision at all. Yeah, very good. Excellent.